Hey everyone! My intention in doing this video today is based on some of the work that I do with archetypes and some of the archetypes that I have been coming across in my work with my clients as well as my groups. And some of the archetypes that are showing up right now are collective. Mace, if you have heard of her, this is some of her work. Carolyn Mace, these are archetype cards, and so I'm going to use her definition of 4 of these archetypes that have been showing up in the collective, and also what I've been picking up on from like just the insight sessions that I do as well as my groups. So one of the main archetypes is the judge. And so I want to put out there that we all have these archetypes within us. Some are more strong than others, or more dominant than others. And so this post is the intention is for it to be neutral, and that I have no personal agenda. So I set my intention before getting on this and cleared my energy, and the intention is for you to discern what resonates with your heart and if there's any information here that can be helpful for you. So each one of these archetypes has a light and a shadow side, and if you've done shadow work before, you know that it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad, it just simply is. And so when we can shine a light on the shadow parts of these archetypes, that's when we're able to alchemize those shadows, or the density of what was hidden in our blind spots, into the light, and actually alchemize it into a strength. So keep that in mind as I go through these archetypes. The first one, like I mentioned, is the judge. So I'm just going to read what Carolyn Mace has said about this archetype. Here's the card. I'll show you that. Yeah. Oh, this light is bad. Sorry. This is the judge. The judge, the shadow archetype of the judge is offering only destructive criticism and misusing business, legal, or criminal authority. So it's misuse of power or misuse of authority. That's the shadow side of the judge archetype. The light side of the judge archetype is balancing justice and compassion, managing the fair distribution of power. So a lot of times the judge, if we can be aware of where we might be misusing our power, or even our ability to have influence over anyone at this time, that we can really look at our heart space and make sure that we're coming from a neutral, non-judgmental space as we are offering our service or offering our gift in the world right now. So that's the archetype of the judge, the shadow and the light. The other one that's been coming up is the bully. So this actually is an archetype that also has a light side to it. You wouldn't think so, but it does. So I'll start with the shadow. So the shadow side of the bully, which again, this light is kind of bad, but the shadow side is it conceals deep fears behind verbal or physical abuse. So it's a defense mechanism. And then the light side of the bully archetype is it highlights your tendency to intimidate others. So it shines a light on your tendency to intimidate others and helps you confront the inner fears that bully you. So that's the beauty of these archetypes, is they're not only playing outside of us, but they're also playing internally within us. And so we all have an inner bully that bullies us. So if we can get more clear on, it's also known as the critic sometimes, but if we can get clear on how that's playing out within us and how we might be projecting that outside of us, that will also help us come back into neutrality and into non-judgment, which connects with the judge archetype. So looking at that and just seeing if any of that lands for you. There's 2 more I wanted to talk about. The third archetype that I've seen a lot of in the collective for a lot of people is the advocate. So here's the shadow side of the advocate. Embracing negative causes or committing to causes for personal gain. So it's actually about service to self instead of the collective. But they might trick themselves into thinking it's service to the collective when it's actually just service to self. And then the light side of the advocate archetype is it inspires you to put compassion in action. So I'm noticing a theme with the light side of all these archetypes is a question that you can start asking yourself is this coming from a space of compassion? And if it's not, you may take a second look at it and see if there's any ego or personal identity or personal story attached to why you may be feeling or acting in a certain way. So these are all just neutral invitations for you to start exploring. So the advocate, the light side of the advocate, inspires compassionate action. And then the last archetype that's been coming up a lot for the collective is the Liberator. Again, this light's kind of bad, but this is the Liberator. And the shadow aspect of the Liberator is imposing your own tyranny over those you claim to liberate, ignoring legitimate constraints. So, and then the light side of the Liberator is freeing yourself and others from outdated beliefs and releasing negative thought patterns. So that's the one that I specifically work with in my groups and with the individual mentees that I work with, is releasing them from negative thought patterns, old stories, and also part of releasing it is actually starting to learn how to see it, right? Learning the only way I can say this is like learning how to step out of the matrix, learning how to really step back and go, oh, I see with 2020 vision. I can see more than what my ego story or this collective play that's playing out right now. I can see past that, and that's super important in our own liberation. So I just want to mention again, for those of you that are just tuning in, that each one of these archetypes plays out externally, so us with our external world, and also internally, so us with ourselves. And healing starts with ourselves. It's learning which one of these archetypes is most at play. So if one of those four really stood out to you, I would really take a look at the light and the shadow and which part of it you might identify with. Maybe you're identifying with the light side of it. Maybe you recognize where you used to be in the shadow of it and were maybe spinning your wheels a little bit with the shadow of it, and then you've moved into the light and now you're able to see your transformation and your progress. And I have to say, one thing that starts to happen when you've done a lot of this shadow work and soul work and really looking at the stuff that hurts and the triggers is it's easier to start to see these patterns play out in the collective. And so it's easier to not get trapped in it. It's like, this is your liberation. This is how you free yourself and come back into neutrality and innocence, is understanding that what you see is not necessarily what's true. And you're able to detach from the story, the collective story, or I like to call it kind of like the collective mush, because there's only one of us here. We feel like we're having our own personal experience, but in reality, we're all having an experience. We're all in this together. And so to understand that what's playing out outside here is not necessarily what's actually happening. And so for you to kind of discern and get more clear on what your truth is going to be extremely important in your moving into this new chapter, into your healing, into your own sovereignty. So I just wanted to just present those and see if it lands with anyone. There's a lot of archetypes. Another one that's coming up that I don't have the card to right now is the wounded child. We work a lot with the wounded child in a lot of my groups, and it helps if we can actually become the advocate for the wounded child and help them become their innocent or tap into the innocent again. So we're all innocent. We just may not have connected to that innocent. So that's my life for today. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, let me know. Again, it's Carolyn Mace. She's a wonderful resource for looking into shadow work. And I hope you have a beautiful day. Bye.